This episode is supported by Thrivable. Thrivable's mission is to create a better future together. They achieve this by making it easy for healthcare companies to include the patient's voice in their decisions so they can create transformative treatments and products for you. And for listeners of Diabetics Doing Things, Thrivable has multiple opportunities for you to earn money for sharing your story, your insights, and your lived experience for companies who produce and design products for people with diabetes. You can participate in online surveys and earn up to $75 per hour and join in-person studies to earn up to $800 per study. To sign up, just go to thrivable.app/Rob and create a profile. It only takes a few minutes. Then just wait for study invitations, participate in a paid diabetes research study, and get compensated for your time. We're always excited to provide people with diabetes opportunities to earn from their lived experience, and this is a great opportunity for you to get paid for your diabetes insights. Sign up today at thrivable.app/Rob. That's Thrivable, thrivable.app/ROB. You can also check them out on Instagram at GoThrivable. Okay, let's get back to the episode. Hello, welcome back to another episode of Diabetics Doing Things. We are telling the amazing stories of people with diabetes from all over the world. I'm very excited to introduce you to our guest this week. He is giving us his time while on break from the NBA All-Star break. For those of you guys who know, you're probably watching All-Star Saturday, probably watching the All-Star game. But for the staff and the coaching staffs of all the teams, it gives them a weekend off in the middle of a really grueling 82-game season. So Dr. Charles Loftis, the sports performance therapist for the Portland Trailblazers and a type 1 diabetic, a person diagnosed with LADA in 2019. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Very excited to have you here, man. And for this show, we typically start off on diagnosis story, just to kind of frame for all of our listeners, how you came to join the type 1 diabetes family. So I know from our buddy Dub Ellison, we checked out your interview with him a few years ago. You shared your story with him. So why don't we start on that crazy day in 2019 and tell us a little bit about what was going on in your life at the time.
Yeah. So 2019, I was in the G League at the time with the Minnesota Timberwolves, their affiliate, the Iowa Wolves. And I still remember this day, like it happened yesterday. And, it was one of those things where get up early, call to go to the airport. We're getting ready to go to, it's our last road trip of the season, our last couple of games. And I think we were going from Iowa to Arizona, and then from Arizona to Salt Lake City were our last two games. And I just remember that morning being at the airport, and I was just like extremely thirsty, not thinking about it. And to a point where, I felt like I could take a straw and just stick it in a large body of water and just keep on going. And I'm like, man, it's unusual. But I thought maybe I'm dehydrated. Maybe I'm just not, drinking enough water. And so it's really still not clicking for me. But while at the airport, I think I finished a gallon within a matter of some hours of just drinking water like that, which, a gallon in a day really is tough for myself to do and many others. But in some hours, I'm just like, yeah, this is unusual. And then after that, it just hit me where I had the symptoms of, having to go to the restroom, or the urge, like every 15 minutes, 12 to 15 minutes, I just felt like, I'm like, all right, I just went to the restroom. Now I got to go right back. But, not much was happening there. So I'm like, okay, I really don't know what's going on now, but I know this is unusual. And, just what my health background of being in the medical field as a physical therapist and working at different hospitals and things and outpatient clinics and whatever. But I knew the symptoms. I knew what they were. But in my head, I'm like, I know I'm not type 2 because, my lifestyle, I was pretty self-conscious of, what I ate, very active, working out, just staying fit, staying in shape. And I knew type 1, typically happens in, your younger years, from between 5 to 10 or something like that. So I was very unaware of type 1 LADA in your adult years. And so it still wasn't clicking to that this is potentially something that's going on for me. I'm starting to think the worst of things. I'm like, yo, is this like some cancerous type stuff? Is, what's going on? I'm like, I have no clue at all. Then the next big clue for me was usually on a flight, having to go to the restroom. I was like, I can probably get through going one time. But yeah, I just kept popping up, having to go. And then whenever I landed, and I think the next morning or something, I always like to, step on the scale just to check in. And I noticed I was down from like 215 to 185. And I was like, okay, this is crazy. I lost a lot of weight unexpectedly. So finished up with the whole trip. When I made it back to my hometown, Oklahoma City, I immediately, made a doctor's appointment. And that was like the end of March, and did labs, blood draws. April 1st comes around, on April Fool's Day. April 1st comes around, and I get this phone call. Mind you, no one has contacted me yet about my results or anything. I just get this phone call from a nurse, and they're like, hey, your prescription's ready. And I'm like, prescription of what? I just went to the doctor yesterday, and I haven't heard it. And she was like, no one's contacted you? I'm like, no. So she was like, oh, yeah, we might need you to come in. So I went in and spoke with them. And yeah, that's when they made me aware of type 1 LADA. And so LADA, for those that may not know the acronym, it's just latent autoimmune diabetes in adults, or type 1.5. There's so many names for it. But so yeah, that was kind of, my first time ever hearing about that form. And that was the realization of basically a new start within life for myself. So
Yeah, I think, for our listeners, we made a point over the past year to really dig into some of the more nuanced, and not as discussed types of diabetes, and LADA, I think, chief among those. And, it's interesting. This is 2019, when this happened for you. And, we've had a lot of people on this podcast who were first misdiagnosed as type 2. And some who are very similar to you, who are super fit, very health conscious. One guy, Dex Gerald, shout out Dex, is a personal trainer, and he was misdiagnosed as type 2 for multiple years. So
wow.
Shout out to your care team for, checking your antibodies as well, because, especially in Black and brown communities, often are misdiagnosed because of how prevalent type 2 can be in those populations. So At the same time, it's so interesting for me to hear your kind of symptoms you were experiencing, because it was very similar to me. I was in high school, and my coaches were always on us about staying hydrated. So I felt like as I was going back, refilling my water bottle, I'm like, man, my coaches are going to be psyched. I'm taking water down. I think you described you could put a straw in a swimming pool and drink it all up. And I felt the same way. I was like, man, I'm unstoppable right now. This is so good.
And the symptoms: polyuria, polyphagia, polydipsia, the three polys.
The three polys.
Yeah, but I mean, they're not that uncommon among diagnoses. I think the interesting part here is that this man was flying from state to state and then back and forth. It's so crazy to me that I think that in childhood, when you get these symptoms of urination and thirst and diabetes, it's immediate hospitalization. But when you're older, you guys are like, I'll just go to the doctor. So it's so interesting to me how it's on some scales, it's you need to be hospitalized immediately if you're a child. If you're an adult, we can just wait till tomorrow, and then we'll just write you a random prescription.
Yeah, we'll just call you just tell you to come pick up your prescription. What do you what do you remember about your diabetes education from that point on? Because obviously you need to learn all the different ins and outs of insulin and dosing and carb counting. What was that like for you?
Sure. Man, it was just grasping the concept of what was what I had to do. First, my doc did a great job of, setting me up with a good endocrinologist here in Oklahoma. And although Oklahoma City is my hometown, I don't live here per se, I still use her back and forth. And Andrea, so I message when I come back in town. She, makes time for me to be able to come in, but she did a wonderful job of the education part. But at that time, it's still early. So for me, it was just understanding why. And I was just how in the heck, what did I do? That was the biggest thing that was still going through my mind. And then on top of now I got to do these formulas, and then hey, she set me up with a dietitian, a registered dietitian as well. And with her, I had to do a journal of everything I ate and estimate carb counting for the days. So just still trying to understand all of that, and the tedious amount of work that you had to do to start to figure out through the honeymoon stages. I mean, it was a lot, but the biggest thing was just mentally, that part of it was really hard for me to really grasp, because it was okay, I got to do this for the rest of my life now. And what could I have done to avoid this from happening? Was there something that, I did to, cause the insult of the pancreas for this to happen? Like, what was it? So it took me a long time to really grasp that concept. But yeah, from the education part, man, the learning the carb counting. I mean, I knew that once I get it down, like this I can be beneficial for me and also the population I'm working with, to be able to understand what I'm eating, how much I'm eating, and just be able to kind of like eye something and estimate. But, still it took an adjustment to get to.
I want to talk about the why for a second, because you had mentioned this on, another interview that you had done. And Eritrea and I have talked a lot about it with our parents, specifically our dads, who had a difficult time accepting that there was nothing they could have done to prevent the onset of diabetes, or that there was nothing that they did that caused it. So for you,
Right.
is that similar for you? And I guess like with your background as like a medical professional and like your background in science, like, did you struggle with that because of the knowledge that you had? Or, talk a little bit about like the emotional kind of struggles that you were going through in those early days.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both. It was just, like, how did this happen? Why did this happen? What could I have done to maybe prevent that? But, speaking to my endocrine and my registered dietitian, they just assured me and, just gave me the affirmation, like, look, it's nothing you did. This is it. So then for me, it was like, okay, how can I turn this situation around? I just started trying to look at the bright side and the positives from this, and still not knowing anything about like device management using the technology and devices yet. At this time, it's still early for me. So I'm just getting used to just the manual injections and the finger sticks, but later as time continued to go on, and then starting to get into the technology and understanding that like there are kids younger than me that have to go through this. And also, like you said, the parents, for them to understand too, that, it was nothing that they've done, nothing they could have done differently. And, it was just one of those things where I'm like, okay, maybe I can use this as a platform, for friends, family, anyone out there, also just to educate. Because I remember going around, matter of fact, my first year in the G League, we had a team photographer that he always had the devices on the back of his arm. At the time, I just saw it, didn't know what it was, but come to find out, it was his Dexcom and his Omnipod. And so then after, this happening for me, the transition, that's when it opened up my eyes, like, oh, this is what this individual was wearing. And then after that, it's like, whenever you get a car and this is a car, you never see it, but then all of
We
a
talk
sudden,
about this
like,
all the time.
now I'm like, everywhere I turn around, it's just instantly able to spot, and so, yeah, for me, it was just, getting like figuring out how I can use this as a tool to be able to help. And not only that, just to educate those individuals that may not have nothing to do with it, but they see it and they're just like, what's that device? And kind of just like, I was like this, I don't know, like not necessarily like a body shame, but almost just like, it makes people uncomfortable sometimes when you have to wear this new device. And so I felt like, this is something that I should maybe get comfortable with, and then I can be able to share my experience and help others get comfortable with being open with, giving themselves an injection in front of people without, having to get up. Because that was the thing. I excused myself, get up and go to the bathroom just to do injection stuff, because I didn't want to, just do it right there at the table. Nowadays, I'd be at dinner with people. I'm like, hold on one second, boom, pop. And they're like, oh, is that hurting? I'm like, nah, it's all good, and just keep it moving. But yeah, like recently I had a colleague, one of our player development coaches, and he just approached me recently, and his son was literally like a week ago, hospitalized for a couple of days. And he was like, yo, I just found out that, you're type 1. And I'm like, yeah. He was like, yeah, like, I want to sit and talk to you because, and the biggest thing for them, the husband and wife, was the mindset. This is your child, seeing them in the hospital bed, seeing them extremely fatigued and weak. And now knowing that this is a lifestyle change for their child for the rest of their life, it was really, really hard, I think, on both of them as well, too. So,
Well, I think that kind of flows into like what I was curious about for you, because you had talked a little bit about when you sort of publicly announced and like put on your social media that you had type 1 diabetes, or you're living with LADA, and like what came back from that. And you had shared that there were people that you already knew who you hadn't had that discussion with before, who were either had a friend or themselves were living with type 1. So, we discovered you, I think Omnipod posted, you did a post with them in 2022. And I think that was probably where we discovered you at the time. And Like, what was that like when you publicly put yourself out there? We talk about it on the podcast a lot. Everybody's diagnosed twice, kind of once when the doctor tells you and once when they feel comfortable enough to let everyone else in on that. It's like
Right.
coming back from that announcement, like, what do you remember about the interactions you were having in the community?
I mean, the love was wonderful. Everyone, they emphasized with myself, and the sympathy was there. And it wasn't something that I necessarily did for that. It was just more so like, hey, this is a big change, but now like I want other individuals to be more comfortable and being able to share their experience. But yeah, like people popped up that I had already known, but I didn't know that either themselves or one of their family members, had type 1. So then they're reaching out to me, just because of, like my background in general, I would get a lot of individuals to pop up with just different questions and things. So then that became more now of another platform and topic just to kind of share and talk and help educate within my scope. So, I mean, the love was real, and it was a surreal moment, but yeah, then it allowed other people, I would get messages like, thanks for the transparency. I feel comfortable talking about this. And even those that were like type 2s, there were some individuals that really struggle with the management and keeping up, and they felt like they want to give up on life. I've actually heard of a couple of cases like this, and being able to share my experience and be open about it and show that I could continue to live almost basically like a normal lifestyle, I think, helped inspire some of them to be able to, keep their stuff well contained and under control.
And it's pretty documented, right? And we talk about it a lot here of the mental strain of living with diabetes or just any chronic illness. And like you talked about, the adjustment to realizing you're going to have to live with this for the rest of your life and there's never going to be a day off. And that can be really overwhelming. You talked initially even just about your mindset and kind of adjusting to, rolling with the punches, so to speak. And I want to talk about, like, for me, my background in athletics has formed how I respond to everything in my life. And I think I'm such a staunch advocate for participating in sports because it teaches you how to fail. It teaches you how to overcome challenges. Mm-hmm. And like, even the best shooters, and we're going to talk about you working with some of the best athletes in the world, but like the best shooters in the league only make 4 out of 10. So, if you get down on yourself after every miss, you don't know what's on the other side of that. And so
Sure.
Do you think that background in athletics, like as an athlete and like in sport performance, helped you like make that adjustment to living with LADA?
I don't know if it necessarily, helped me with the adjustment of it. I think the background, it was definitely a challenge with, the travel and being able to be comfortable working with my athletes and to get through work at the same time now. But, I don't know if I could say it necessarily helped me with that challenge of living with it. But I mean, it was definitely, there's some inspiration there for sure. And then specifically some of the athletes prior to me going pro, I had my own business in Oklahoma. I had a sports performance facility, and I had an athlete, his name was Nate, that was a type 1. And that was my first time actually like working with and performance side of an athlete of, with type 1. And he educated me a lot at the time. This is way before I even, way before I was diagnosed. And so it just gave me an insight of things to prepare for and to have for, like individuals, not only athletes, but just in general being around, like having snacks around or anything with sugar just to prepare for any type of low moment. And so, it helped me with understanding that and, just knowing that looking at athlete performance, I notice a day to day from one day they're, perky and very energetic. And then another day they're kind of, like dealing with something, then it makes me think deeper than just like emotionally what they're dealing with, like just to make sure systemically that they're okay too. So, it gave me a few insights of how to help manage and what to look for. And then also just, like just to take care of myself. But
did you connect with Nate or reconnect with Nate after you were diagnosed?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I still talk to him to this day, man. I just reached out to him recently just about some questions. My endocrine wants me to kind of switch from one device to another. And so I was just, picking his brain on like, hey, are you familiar with this one? Are you still using this? And so on. So yeah, we still keep in touch every once in a while. So yeah. But
Eritrea, what do we say about a friend with diabetes?
A friend with diabetes is a friend indeed.
Yo,
right?
Yeah.
The easy way to level up is to have a friend, man. That's so key.
Yeah. No, for sure. It's a community, you know what I mean? Like once you meet someone with it, it becomes a close knit community. And I'm always, like, this is our first time really meeting here, but I feel like this won't be, the last time that, we ever hear from each other, or, even being when I travel a lot, popping into a city and things like that. And the same thing with Dub. I met him first, and then when we played out in Indianapolis, was like, hey, met up with him. He came to a game, and just showed him love. But it's just one of those things that the community, it's important, it's needed. But yeah, once you meet those individuals, and they're long lasting friends forever.
For sure.
It's interesting that you mentioned a community, because I mean, in my head, community can mean so many different things, right? Especially since the pandemic. So I wonder if you knew, before the Omnipod post that you were like stepping onto this huge diabetes online community scene, because it's a bit of a monster if you're not familiar with it. So did you know that it was this plugged in when that post went crazy viral?
No, I didn't realize all the different platforms. I never, realized that individuals have their own individual platforms like that. And not only that, like camps and things, like back in Oregon, there's a basketball camp.
Yeah, Chris Dudley.
Yeah, the Chris Dudley camp, the type 1 diabetics, and, just the different, awareness, marches and things. I wasn't really familiar, with it. But after, meeting a lot of individuals, it's really opened up a lot of light to me.
You guys talked a lot about also like your why and how you felt at the beginning of your diagnosis. And I wanted to say it. You were diagnosed in 2019. That means you've only had diabetes for 4 years. Mm-hmm. And you're like, it took me a really long time to get over that feeling. And I'm like, do we measure time differently? Because to me, it's not been very long. So It's like, how much time did it take you? Like, and also like, what did that process, I guess, look like as far as like processing being a totally healthy adult to now living with a chronic condition while having to tell other healthy people how to best optimize their like physical strength? So what does that all look like?
So for me, like, the biggest thing was like emotionally, and also just figuring out my system and my body, how things operate. For an example, like something small as in I'm very active, like working out. One of the most frustrating things is when you get ready to start a workout and then your blood sugar starts to go down, and then you're like, you have to stop in the middle of that. At those times, I would just get up and I would just leave the gym a lot of times because it was just very frustrating. So dealing with the frustration of things, the highs and lows, waking up, your blood sugar is high throughout the night, and then you just feel, it's an emotional roller coaster, being able to channel that and understand it. But once I was able to dial in on those things and then know like, okay, this is happening, let me just sit back, let me, relax a little bit and wait till this balances out. So those were the things where I say it was kind of, like the timing for me to flip that over was a little bit earlier. But, there's still things that I deal with, and I think it's going to continue to happen no matter what, with balancing out those highs or lows, or just activities and whenever you have to stop, and, the preparation, the preparation is always going to be there. And so now it's just becoming kind of second nature for me though. But those honeymoon stages at the beginning of, knowing what my ratios were and making sure that, I'm plugging these things in. But now, like, the technology's helped out so much more to really.
Okay. Because I was like, how do we just change a mindset? Like, what? Like, in 3 years, you're totally, like, come back to being this positive, perfect NBA man. And it's just like, no, like, how do you people do that? I don't believe in that.
Help people, friends, communities, and just understanding that what we're going through is it's okay, and it's not the end of time. And, it's there's so many other things out there that you could be diagnosed with that are terminally, and so, I talked about my why as being like the chosen one. It's like, okay, well, I was chosen to do this. Now, how can I flip over and look at it as more of a positive thing? And so that was, the why for me was just like, all right, just felt like I was one of those chosen ones that, even with my knowledge and the background that I have in the medical field, it's like, okay, there were still some adjustments with that, some things that, I wasn't aware of, bolus, basal, and,
the lingo.
Yeah, and all the lingo and whatever else, but now it's once I got a good understanding of it, it changes your mindset.
It's not to like throw any shade on anybody, but I hope he listens to this. Gary found out that MDI meant manually delivered insulin 4 days ago. because I told him. We were doing this other project for Diatribe, and he was like, wait, what's MDI? And I was like, dude, manually delivered insulin. That's what you're on. And he was like, I didn't know. He's had diabetes for way longer.
You
So I
don't
think
say
it's funny how we
MDI isn't
always
multiple. It's not multiple daily injections to you. Is it?
I
both?
thought it was manually delivered insulin.
Interesting. I'll have to see who's right.
Oh, we
see
gonna have to
who's right.
fight.
Yeah, see,
Anyway.
this is new to me too. I've never really heard the term. So
Yeah,
There's lots of random lingo that you learn throughout the course of diabetes.
I have this entire like PhD level thesis of like living with diabetes and like how it changes your perspective on certain things, and like things that were exciting at one point and then you get burnt out on them, then you come back, and it, so it's interesting having me for 19 years, you for 4 years, and Eritrea for 23 years. Just celebrated your 23rd anniversary. So like as we go through these different phases, like how things show up, it's always interesting. I do think though it is refreshing to me, because you're right. It is difficult to go to the gym and like work out. And that's one of the most common challenges that a lot of people with diabetes face and they at least voice and share, because you're doing this thing that's positive for yourself. Like you're motivating yourself to go to the gym, and then you're in a class or you're at the gym, and then you have to stop and drink a juice box or like eat some snacks. Yeah. And, if you're trying to, lose weight or gain muscle or whatever.
The after, like for girls, a lot of us like will be finding the workout, and then you have to drink a juice box after, and you're like, I just burned these calories.
And then you have to return them with calories. So it's like, but I think it's good to hear somebody who like is literally at the peak of their field, sports performance therapist, who also deals with those things. And it's just like, that's life with diabetes. That's just that's the trick.
Yeah. No, it's just life, and I mean, there's times that I might have a guy on the table, I'm treating them, and also just for them to understand, I've had to educate a lot of them of like, hey, this is what this is. They might feel a device on my body when they brush up against me. They're like, yo, what is that? And I'm like, oh, this is X, Y, and Z. Or they might see it and they're like, hey, what is that? I know when I first had my Dexcom, a lot of them thought it was a tobacco patch for like smoking and stuff. And I'm like, no. I was like, no, it's just it measures my blood sugar.
That is a really big tobacco patch.
Yeah, that's just a disconnect. Like it is, and that's the first thing I'm like, no, that's just way too much. It's just a lot of the unawareness of it. It's just, this is what it is. It's out there and exists. There's a lot of individuals that, I mean, I was, in pools before, out and on vacations, and I've had other, like adults randomly think the same thing, that it was like a tobacco patch or something when they saw my Omnipod or something. I'm like, no. But yeah, like working with the athletes in the middle of treatments and things. And I mean, they've understood and they're very patient, and, I might have to take a break real quick or ask a colleague like, hey, my hands are tied, but can you grab me like a little orange juice real quick? And they know, they understand. And, might take, depending on how, low it is or how fast it's dropping, it might take a little time for it to come back up, but just to be able to balance that out. And it just, it happens. And, nowadays I'm very conscious of, where things are, what my numbers are before I start activity. And because I know it's a lot of moving around, and it's almost, whenever you give yourself the, a dose of the insulin plus moving the activity on top of it, it can almost be like a double negative, where it just makes your blood sugar drop so much quicker too. So being just aware of little things like that. But I mean, they still happen in the middle of treatments, in the middle of, packing equipment, moving things around. I mean, it's just, they're just there.
When you are, like, let's say you have Kawhi Leonard, he's laying in front of you, he has a terrible situation, and you are low. Okay, he's not on this team. He hasn't been for a long time. That's just who I wanted to say. Stop shaking your head at me, Robert. Okay. Anyways, you're just working through the low. Like, you're not someone who has to, like, because if you feel low, some people very strongly have to sit down and stop what they're doing. But you are Charles Loftis at your service, continuing through this low, powering through while someone hands you a juice box. Like a surgeon when they're just like dabbing their forehead, like you just continue to operate. Like
it depends. I think it really depends. And one thing, like, I've got to be very familiar with my symptoms and what I feel, and at those different type of levels. So if I know if it's at the early phase and like I'm starting to feel it come on, and I'm like, all right, well, how much time do I have, or what do I need to do? Then I might be able to work through it. But if I know that it's like, if it's, I'm starting to quiver a little bit, shake, and then, my forehead starting to sweat and things like that, then I might have to stop really quick. If it's a triage moment where it's like, we have a full team, so I'm always have other staff members and coworkers around that we pitch in and everyone helps out. So if it's one of those things and like a true medical emergency, most likely we'll have people, helping around. But if it's just like, a training session or a treatment session or, me assessing someone and the priority is not that high, sometimes I'm able to work through it, or I just might be able to say, hold on 1 second, let me take care of this, 1 minute, and I'll be right back and do that and then come back, and then it's no big deal. But so no, I'm not just working through it all at all.
Gotcha.
Because there are times that you just have to sit down and you're like, hold on, let me breathe real quick and let me balance back out, because I feel like
I would just pull myself. I gotta bench myself. Anyways,
Yeah.
I know Rob was just gonna drink this juice and then make this slam dunk or whatever the hell it is
I think
he does.
though,
I don't
like,
know.
if I'm sweating and like I feel that I have this like sort of like hot flash feeling and I feel that sweat
Yeah.
on me, I'm like, oh, I'm in trouble. Especially if I've been sitting down, I'm like, oh, I'm in deep water. Better figure this
You're
out.
in danger,
quick.
girl.
Yeah, it just get my alarms start going off. But one thing, like, and we haven't necessarily mentioned this explicitly, but this is another thing that many people face is how do you let people know around you about your diabetes? Like, obviously, you're in the sports performance staff, so you have your whole team. Is that, do you have like a signal, or do you have just like that line of communication where you kind of, hey, I need to tag out for 10 minutes and treat this? Or, how do you
Do you
talk
wear
about your
ID?
diabetes like in the organization?
Initially, before everyone knew, it was a thing that when we had our department meeting, for one, I spoke to some people individually. My director at that time, I spoke to him individually, and then maybe like the head athletic trainer spoke to them individually and just let you know, like, hey, this is something that, because, during the interview, that's nothing that's discussed in the interview until, after you get there and get settled. But whenever we had a department meeting, I felt like it was time for me just to open up and let everyone know, like, hey, I'm also type 1. This is what this means. So there might be moments that, I might have to stop, or I might need help or something like that. But just in case, someone, they didn't hear from me, one morning, or I showed up late because I might have an episode, like, it was important to let them know, to let my head of security know as well, because those are things that, we're traveling as a unit. So, they always need to make sure and know what's going on. So I just, waited for the right time and, got everyone together and just explained it to them, and they were open arms. And, there was obviously at the time a lot of questions and things too, and them still trying to figure out, because a lot of it, they might hear, but they still don't quite fully understand what that fully means. I mean, even, when they see me, a lot of people think that, like, oh, you're type 1, so you can't eat any sugar or anything like that. And I'm like, no, that just means my body doesn't produce this. So now I just have to supplement myself with this to help balance that out. That doesn't mean I can't eat carbohydrates now. And you still need carbs for fuel for your brain and for your muscles. So, it's just still like giving them that little education piece. But just found the time.
It's an
Defeating the
interesting, like,
stigma.
you have to advocate for yourself like all the time, whether it's day 1 or day 1,000 or day 10,000. You know what I mean? Like we're always kind of educating and telling people. But you just mentioned the travel word. So many of our listeners probably don't know this about the Portland Trailblazers, but no professional sports team travels as many miles in a year as the Portland Trailblazers.
Yeah.
And
Why?
one of the things that, well, I'll tell you why, because they are in the Pacific Northwest and there's no other NBA franchise. The closest one is Sacramento. So I believe Sacramento is the travel
Not
partners.
Toronto? I don't
Girl,
know. I don't know.
learn your geography.
My
We're
bad.
closer to Vancouver.
Yeah, Vancouver is close, but like there's no NBA team there anymore. So if you got to go
Learn
to
your geography.
you got to go
I am
play
a
a
product of-
back to back in Orlando or Miami, just going back to Portland, you're flying all the way across the country. So the amount of miles is like 30% higher than even the second place team, even Sacramento. So we've had people, and Gary Forbes, shout out Gary, talking about travel with the NBA because it's 6 months of rigorous, like 41 road games, 82 game season. And that's not including playoffs, not including now the in-season tournament. So, you're getting to a city sometimes at 4 a.m, going to the hotel, sleeping for a couple hours, and then right to work.
Back to it.
How do you, and so diabetes management in different time zones, traveling, not sleeping well, all of those things affect our blood sugar. So how do you encounter that or manage that on the road?
So number one thing is preparation. So, because you don't ever want to go somewhere and get stuck and you run out of medication. You don't have enough. So I have a board on my wall at home. Then I have like days, and then it says CGM, and then it says pods. So I will go and estimate how many days I'm going to be gone for. And then I also add a few just for air. So who knows? Say there's a plane, something happens and we just get stuck somewhere, have to spend extra nights there. You know, you never know what can happen. So I always calculate that. So that means how many CGMs do I need to take with me? You know, mine that's coming only lasts, mine lasts for 10 days. So most of our trips are 14 days or less. So I still usually take an extra one just in case there's an accident and I rip one off. And then my insulin and my pods as well too. So I always prepare like that and make sure I have everything that I need for the road. Managing on the road, I think the devices help out a lot, but we always have snacks and like, food around and drinks. So I always, make sure that in my room at night that I take stuff from, whether it's from the plane or at the hotel, that I always have like maybe a couple Gatorades and some little gummy candies or something, just to have if I have a low in the middle of the night. But yeah, we're pretty taken care of with food. There's always food around, breakfast, lunch, or dinner. But you still have to find the time like to get into the gym just to help balance things out. And yeah, but the preparation for me is like the biggest thing. It's just making sure I have what I need around me and making sure that I have some spare things just in case there's an emergency. I mean, there's times that I've traveled somewhere and ran out of insulin pen and I've had to go pad a pocket, just for one, pen. And then, but now, I make sure that all my stuff, my pharmacies are, nationally. So if something does happen, I can just find the local, pharmacy and go get my stuff from there.
Or find a local person with diabetes. You can also follow Mutually Diabetes and let them know something happened so that, we can help each other out through our community. But you know what? Being the NBA sounds so glamorous, and I'm sorry, parents listening to this, but that schedule sounds like ass. Like, that sounds horrible.
No, it's tough.
Rob was asking all these questions about how you live with diabetes, and I was like, how do you even have a life? Like, how do you have a home or a dog or a relationship or friends? Like, how can you manage any of those things when you're consistently living out of a suitcase is what it sounds like.
No, it's tough as hell. Obviously I'm in it for the passion of what I do. And I love, team dynamics. I love working as a former athlete myself. So it's just one of those things that I don't really think you ever really get used to it. I mean, it's exhausting whenever you're, in the middle of the grind. And also you got to take in consideration winning versus losing. When you're losing, the vibes, the positivity is not there, that you have to try to make sure, just staying positive and things. But no, the travel sucks. I mean, you miss out on really important dates and activities and events with family and holidays. You really have to plan, it's really, well, for one, it's really hard to plan because schedule's unexpected. What are we doing tomorrow? We really don't know what we're doing the next day until the night before, because anything could switch up. Coach could switch up and say like, no, we got practice tomorrow. He could switch up and say there's no practice. So like trying to plan out ahead of time, it's ass. It's really hard.
So personal routines are probably what keeps you really like, now that's the Rob Howe factor. I'm just going to be quiet now. All you NBA people are the same.
I remember in his documentary, I think it was called Muse, Kobe, rest in peace, was talking about how when you're in pursuit of being the best, you have to sacrifice things that other people get to do. Like, and he was talking about specifically like being a good son, being a good brother or cousin, like, and sometimes father and husband. It's like hard to do both. And so I guess that kind of like flows into my next question. Like, I'd never heard anybody talk about it like that until that point. And so even to hear somebody who like obviously like reached the highest pinnacle of greatness, like saying it comes at a cost was just like refreshing, because it's like some of it, we've all been there where we're working towards something that we want and having to say no to things that other people get to do. And it's unfair. But I guess for you, kind of flowing into that question, is like you get to work with some of the top athletes in the world. Like these are like the cream of the crop. And, people have dreams. People with diabetes have dreams of doing their career or competing at the highest level or reaching the highest level of their career. And so like, what advice would you have for somebody who either has just been diagnosed or is living with diabetes and, has dreams of competing at the highest level of their career?
It's doable. I mean, there are other people doing it. So, they're not the first one to ever be diagnosed with this and to pursue, that type of, level of activity or sport or whatever it is that they're trying to pursue. Most likely there's someone else that has done it. It's very doable, but, just knowing that there's a great support system out there, being vocal about it and allowing people to know, because if no one knows what you're dealing with and what's going on, then, no one knows how to be able to help from that standpoint. But, it's just, it's very doable. There's so many different things that have changed in the industry, the medical industry, to help people continue to pursue the life that they want to pursue, staying active, swim, hike, run, whatever it may be, and just playing your sport, your sport of life. I mean, everyone's an athlete, but everyone's sport is just completely different, so I always live by that motto, and it's very doable. But the biggest thing is just staying positive about it, and just being in the community and keep branching out to individuals that can help with that support.
For sure. Great advice. And I think, for people who are listening, hopefully, we're going to, plug your Instagram and things, and hopefully there'll be people who are able to have questions for you and reach out to you and connect with you within the community. And, I think that's one thing for me that, Eritrea talked about it earlier. Like, you don't really know how big or how impactful your story can be for someone. And, it isn't always like a viral moment or millions of views or anything like that, but it's those conversations with, a parent who has a son or daughter playing basketball with diabetes, who reaches out and says, hey, I have this question, or, thank you for sharing your story, because we're able to look to you as somebody who kind of, in closing though, I had a question for you, because one of my good friends who I was an intern with when I was at the Olympic Committee, it's been now almost 15 years, but used to be the sport performance coach at the Phoenix Suns and now works for University of Texas. But he talks about Corey, my guy, my absolute guy, just like great dude. You guys got the same haircut too. So shout out to you guys. But he talks about, these are Ferrari level, Lamborghini level athletes. And like, you don't just take them to you don't prescribe them the same thing that you would for just a truck. And so from like a sports specific performance perspective, like how is working with the best athletes in the world, like change the way you think about sport performance? I think like, I love hoop. I've played basketball my whole life. I'll never be able to do anything close to what Shaden Sharp can do. Like we're just not even basically even the same physiology at all. And it's like to see somebody like that and to see guys who can do the things they can do, like how has that changed your perspective as a sports performance coach?
Well, I think the number one thing is that realizing that these individuals are still just normal people day to day. I mean, great personalities, wonderful spirits, just warming hearts. Like they're really wonderful individuals alone. So just taking them from looking at a professional athlete that's capable of doing this, that's the first thing that I look at is looking at them as just regular individual people. Cause I mean, they are, there's a lot, especially when we get a lot of young guys coming in, and a lot of times, me helping them may not even be about sports performance. It's just some of the stuff is just daily life things, like teaching them, just life things, checks, about checks, or, how to cook. Like, bro, do you know how to cook? Like maybe you should start learning how to cook a little bit just to help take care of yourself. I know you have the money to, afford a chef, but, what if you're dating? What if you have a girl and she just wants something romantic? She wants you to cook or something like that. Like, just those little basic little life skills and things. Outside of that is, we find ourselves helping with that more than anything. But these individuals are very talented, and they got to this level without my help. I'm only there as an extension, as a resource to be able to help complement them in some form or fashion. So taking the ego out of being like, oh, I'm a performance coach, I'm a physical therapist, this is what you need for your body, versus that, just taking that stuff out of it and learning about them, knowing that some of them that have been in the league might know about their bodies a lot more than some of them that have not, like your CJ McCollums and, your Dames, like they know about their bodies. And so you have to be careful of what you say, how you say it, because I mean, they'll call out fluff when they know it's fluff, Yeah. And so just being very transparent, being very, having humility about things. If there's something that you're unaware of, it's like, you know what, bro, I don't know about that, but I'm willing to, if you know more about it than I do, I'm definitely here to listen. And also I'll go find someone else that knows about it, and I can bring back the answer that we're looking for or that you're looking for or whatever, So I think, just knowing that these individuals got here one way or another without my help, they're going to see so many different people throughout the level of their career that are coming in and out of the industry. So just realizing that, understanding, and just, being an extension of some type of resource, for them. It's basically like we're like librarians, like they're coming in, they're looking for a book. We're there just to help, support them and find that.
It was interesting too. You kind of answered a question from earlier about like, how do you manage life on the road? Like you're a team, you're talking about, very young guys, like learning how to cook, like that's something that we don't think about. Like when athletes are portrayed in the media, that these guys are 19 years old, they talk about the contracts the amount of money they make is public for everyone in the world to see. And, they're still learning how to live they're on their own for the first time, and
Right.
how to manage all of the different people in their lives and like businesses and also showing up and be the best players that they can be. But that's really cool to see. Like, it's not just, sport performance is not just on the court, it's really, all of those things plugging into it. So, man, this was an awesome interview. I really loved having this conversation. And again, from a schedule standpoint, you talked about it, but getting time with you, I'm just really fortunate that we were able to work it out over the All-Star break. And, thank you for coming on the podcast and sharing your story.
No, man, I appreciate both of you. And it's an honor. Anytime that, something pops up and, we want to do another one, like I'm always game for these type of things, man. I love it. And, this is, like I said, this is part of the why, like to be able to help share experiences, share stories, and hopefully influence some others out there that, are dealing with the struggles for themselves, whether it's the individual themselves or whether it's a parent or significant other. Because it affects everyone, it really does affect everyone. But, it's change. There's so many different things I can help out with it. It's not the end of the world. So, yeah, and I really appreciate it.
One idea I got from this conversation is we got to bring Diabetes Legends basketball clinic to Oklahoma City and bring you in.
I was about to say that.
We did our first clinic last year. We're doing 2 of them this year, one in Dallas and one in Denver, and just a half-day basketball clinic for kids with diabetes. And the only goal is to leave with a friend with diabetes. So, yeah, man, we're going to be doing some cool stuff. Anyway, well, thank you, man, again for the time. It was great to chat with you and kind of get to know you a little bit. Anything you need, anytime you need anything, just reach out, man. We're happy to help.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Same. If there's anything that pops up, anything that I can help with, and, if I'm around. You're both in Dallas?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My family's from Dallas. My dad's from Jacksonville, Texas. So I have a lot of family in the Dallas area.
What part of Dallas? Actually Dallas? Or are you one of those people?
Dallas, Grand Prairie, Lancaster, all over.
Yeah, I grew up in DeSoto, so it's awesome.
Yeah, awesome. My family's from DeSoto.
Yeah, let us know if you're ever down here.
For sure. I definitely will. So keep in touch. I really appreciate the opportunity again. And if I could ever, come back and be a guest again, I would love that. So I appreciate you.
Don't worry. When we're looking for sponsors next year, we'll definitely hit your inbox. For our basketball camps.
No, I'm serious. We start the conversation now. Like we're doing Lauren.
Dear
Lauren
Adam
Cox.
Silver.
We got Gary Forbes back in Denver. Like, why not take it to Oklahoma City? And Doc Loftis is the special speaker.
Yeah. Cool. During the summertime, we set that up during the summer or something like that, and get after it. Yeah,
big fun.
I appreciate it.
All right, man. Have a great rest of the weekend. Enjoy the time off, and good luck the rest of the season, man.
No, thank you very much. Take care.
Mailbag.
I
feel like none of these have even really reached anyone yet, and we've done a lot of them, but I think this is mostly for us, I think, but for now. But right now we're going through the comments and we're, trying to find ways to discuss them. And one of the comments on TikTok was from a type 1 mom of a type 1. And she was sharing that she wouldn't trade the perspective that being a mom of someone with type 1 as a person with diabetes and a caregiver with diabetes has given her. And I wanted to flip that on you and ask, like, has diabetes given you or changed your perspective on things in a way that you wouldn't want to change? So, like, for example, we just had the conversation with Chuck Loftis, and we were talking about travel and adding the extra step and like preparation. And, I know that I would for sure not be as prepared or as thoughtful about living if I didn't have diabetes. And so, I don't know. I wanted to know if that resonated with you at all.
Sometimes, but I also think that we're all intersectional in our own ways, or we're all standing at our own intersections, and so part of being a Black woman in America, there's like a bunch of stuff that I have to think about all the time. Like, I remember like I'd go to a grocery store and like grab a snack and like just start randomly eating it. I remember once being with a friend who's darker skinned than me and being like, don't do that, someone's gonna think we're stealing, stuff like that. So I think that there's different experiences that you have in life that add lessons to you. I do want to say this about diabetes though. I'm glad I learned the lessons that diabetes has taught me when I was supposed to, because I think that the lessons diabetes teach you are lessons we're all going to learn in life at some point, because we're all just one diagnosis, one phone call, one family member event from becoming a part of a, marginalized community, be that disabled, mentally unwell, etc. So I don't think there's anything to trade back here. I think if anything, it's just like a certain time point that I would have gotten the lesson anyway. Does that make sense?
Stop traffic. Stop the rotation of the world, because I totally agree with Eritrea Musa.
Hell is freezing over.
Look out, guys. You finally crossed the threshold. No, I agree, because for me, as a white male in America, we've talked about this, like I could pretty much go anywhere and people think I belong there. Yeah. And so I never really thought of what it was like outside of that. And not to say that diabetes gave me that much of a perspective, but you were talking about relative to other disabilities. I think it made me so much more accepting that, just because someone is different doesn't mean that, you treat them differently. And they're still people, and we all want to be seen. We want to be loved. We want to be heard. And I think now I have greater capacity to see people as they are, not just how they want to be.
Yeah, it's easy to other people. And I think I learned a long time ago that I am other. I am other, and I will always be other. It's interesting. I'm a person living with diabetes, but I was born other, because if you think about it, I am very uniquely positioned where I have two parents where neither one of them looks like me. So I was born other, and I already knew I was different from the people in my household, so I'm different from the people in my school. So I was already like feeling really different. So then getting diagnosed with diabetes and like not speaking English for a long time, for me it was really normal to just always be other. So it's very interesting to me that you, a person on completely other side of the spectrum of that, right? Belonging, I do mostly in every room that you've ever walked into, including the room you were born into, that you still also have a similar experience where you're like, no, I think this, I would have learned this at some point, one way or the other.
That point you made too about learning it early, and I think I've said this a bunch on the podcast, like diabetes sort of grows you up really quick because you're very aware of your own mortality, and if you don't eat enough carbies, you might die. And it's like, oh, what's the cure to your death? Gummies. It's like, it's like
it's all funny. Really, it's so silly.
It's hilarious. Diabetes is hilarious. And so, yeah, I think I'm grateful that I got that earlier, and I'm kind of aware of that. And I also have tremendous empathy for children like you who were born or like had to do that at age 7 or at age 3.
But it's not that, I feel like that about other kids. I was watching this, and maybe we're getting off subject, but I was watching this TikTok this week that was like this guy talking about how when he was 8 years old, he helped his mom graduate from college. And I was like, that's me. Like, I remember writing my mom's like senior college thesis paper for her English thing so she could get her bachelor's, because my mom's a teacher. And I was like, I was a young scientist, English literature major. Like, you can't tell me shit when you diagnose me. Like, I had already helped my parents pay their taxes for the last 8 years. Apply for citizenship where? You know what I mean? So I think that it's very unique to me that I was already like, what's one more thing? So no, I don't think I would trade it. But I'm also notoriously the girl who would not take a cure for diabetes. So that's a different mailbag for another day.
When you do take the cure, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be like, you said.
You'd have to like literally. You would have to like literally have me like there's why we got to ride and why I got to die, because I want to know. Like, you're kind of in your Bravo girl era. I don't know if it's probably for your close friends or don't make me call Portia.
But like, I'm going to be your Andy Cohen. I'm gonna be like, you said on episode 300 of Diabetics Doing Things in 2024.
How are you going to be my
said.
Andy Cohen when I am your Andy Cohen? I'm the one who goes back. This is a great mailbag to tie you into. Make sure you listen to Neil Greathouse's episode and write into the mailbag at diabeticsdoingthings.com if you hear me say something and then lie about it, which right now I think that's running a marathon in 2024 because I said that in 2023. So we got to get on it.
You better get to running. She's a runner. She's a track star. She's going to run a marathon in 2024.
Don't call Portia. No one call Portia.
See you guys next time. Mailbag at diabeticsdoingthings.com.